This is the Collector Car Podcast, the home for the auto enthusiast. Join Greg Stanley as he applies over 25 years of insights and analytical experience to the collector car market. He will interview the experts and throw in some fun stuff as well.
Welcome to the Collector Car Podcast, where we review market trends, auction results, and look at what's selling and what's not. I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Adam Jaklitsch. Adam, how you doing today?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, you are a Ferrari salesman, brand ambassador out of Ferrari of New England, correct?
I am.
Well, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today. For our listeners to hear Adam's career journey, how he became a brand ambassador, be sure to listen to his interview on my other podcast called Learn From Others. We not only learned about his career, but also found out what his first car was, which was ironically similar to mine, what his dream car is, and what cool company car I picked out for him based on his job as a Ferrari brand ambassador. So, Adam, today is all about cars. If you would, just tell me a little bit about your passion for cars and how it started in such a way that you ended up at Ferrari.
I've always been in luxury sales over all the last 25 years. Jewelry, watches predominantly, and then always had a passion for Ferraris. And so I went eventually to apply with a Ferrari dealer who had been doing an event at a friend's clothing store. And at that time, I kind of, just talked to the right person that coincidentally just walked through the door. And 11 years later, here I am. I love Ferrari. I love cars in general. So it just, I never sold cars ever before I started here. So I think that sometimes was a good thing. At least that's what everyone told me. A lot of people usually had been in the industry for many years, eventually got into Ferrari at one point or another. So it was kind of this was my first view into the car industry, basically. So I've been fortunate to be around some really neat people and some amazing cars that go through the showroom floor and into a lot of garages.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And if you could you dispel some of the myths or, I don't know, talk a little bit about the Ferrari brand as a dealership? And I'll tee this up in such a way as some of my questions. Like, I have the understanding that most of the Ferrari dealerships really only deal in used cars, not necessarily new cars. If I'm a first-time Ferrari buyer, what does that look like? Could you just talk to a couple of those points?
All Ferraris are made to order. So, yes, predominantly, sometimes for clientele, it's difficult to understand that their first used car is a Ferrari. As a dealership, we get about 76 new allocations per year. So in the meantime, with existing clientele who have been around several years, who have an ambition and sickness for cars in a good way, and in a fast-paced kind of get their first bite at the apple for some of those, and that's more out of respect and not to shun people away. I am at commission sales. I don't make money off of shunning people or get any enjoyment out of telling people no. But as I said earlier in the podcast, unfortunately, sometimes the most genuine answer is the answer that some people just don't want to hear, and it's hard to understand. Like most car companies, there's new cars waiting for you to come and buy, and there happens to be used ones as well. So usually if we introduce you to the brand, we want to get to know you. It's a relationship. I'm not here to sell you just a car. It's going to be many over your time. And again, I said earlier, we kind of end up being almost like wealth management people, but more for exotic cars. Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? What would you eventually like to have? And I will help put a plan together to help you get that. Sometimes we ask you to enjoy this 1,000-mile car or less while you wait for the new one to arrive, which we will be gladly to. It's just that they're currently taken up for the time being until the, allocations open up a little bit more. That, why miss a season of driving when you have this beautiful car as well? So that's usually how the business model would work with our brand. We have great examples of slightly used, and if there's a cancellation of a new one sitting there and the timing is right, as long as you live in my region, you can't be in California and buy a new car from me unless you own property or somewhere in my selling region, just to be fair. Not everyone always follows that rule, but in a way we do our best to abide by the rules that were given by the factory.
Yeah, and when I stopped by your dealership there, you had a really cool car that I fell in love with immediately, but it was that...
Super America?
Super America, you remember?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
It was a Super America. Even though it has that weird curved glass.
Yeah.
When it's down, it looks fantastic.
It is. It looks better down than it does up sometimes, but it's an eclectic piece. You have to understand what it is, where it came from, and why, and this brand has so many facets, and it has well over 70 years of great names to reintroduce. But, I think the one thing that this brand really offers is a form of consistency, that you can still look at a car today and still see the lines and finish of something from the past. We've always had Pininfarina design our cars until recently, so you've always seen certain lines and things that you see from other brands, and I think we've really evolved nicely in that way, that someone has something to attach themselves to regardless of how old you are, or what you always saw as a child is still kind of visible in the car today.
Yeah, and if you could you tell me a little bit about the, I might pronounce this wrong, the Pista program you have going on right now?
Sure. Well, the Pista, of course, is the more race-oriented car, like the F430 Scuderia. We had the 458 Speciale, and now, of course, it's going to be the 488 Pista, which is the retiring car of that mid-engine 8-cylinder car, as you see. They're made a little less, amounts than the regular production is, but the Pista Spider will probably be the retiring model that you'll see of the 48 before they roll out the Portofino. So it's, currently just starting to arrive throughout the country. The Pista Spider is there's probably 4 or 5, if that, in the country at the current moment. But, another 4 months, you'll start to see a little bit more on social media arriving.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah,
sure.
It's a gorgeous, aggressive-looking car. Ferrari takes a lot of time to not only engineer and make that car look amazing and aggressive and have new innovations, but, they transfer that technology moving forward. Ferrari has always raised the bar on themselves. Not saying that no one else is a competitor, but when you spend that kind of money in research and development just to transfer and make the F1 car better on the weekends, that transfers into the street cars, which makes us big, presence in the racing and exotic car market, because we are, for real, a racing company. We don't build cars to make more, to make money. We don't advertise because the racing is the advertising. At least our race history is the advertising.
Now, here's a weird question for you. What's one of the weirdest options you've had requested?
I encourage individuality. I like red tan, which is what most people envision in a Ferrari. I've kind of gone away from that. Unless that's what the person wants, but I think equipping it cosmetically is more important than just the color combination. I think if you're going to build a really exotic car, wild colors, you got to go all the way. You can't stop, per se. I don't mean to make it obnoxious looking, but you have to put that attention to detail and the contrasting, the complement that color to go with it. If you're not, at that point you do run into clients that don't want to spend that extra money to do so, but they still have spent a lot of money to make it look a certain way, but now it looks unfinished. So without sounding arrogant, that what's another $20,000 on a $400,000 car? Right. It's a lot of money. It always will be. But if you're building something out of passion and it's customized, it's not an immediate reason that you immediately start stopping. I don't think we should build a $500,000 car, but if those are crucial in the resale in order to make that car elegant enough to appeal to the next person that has your vision, that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's one of the cooler cars that's passed through in the last month or so? Could be new, could be, pre-owned. Is there anything that's really stuck out to you?
Sometimes we see just a couple vintage stuff. We had a 250 coupe come through. We had a Lusso, I think, stop by while I was on the truck. I have a 599 GTO that just, makes my heart melt sometimes. It's in a 3-stage Rosso Fuoco, which is just a gorgeous color. I think it's my favorite red. If I was ever going to get a red, it's maroon, it's candy apple red with like a real fine metallic paint, or flake, excuse me. Once the light hits it, it just creates this 3-dimensional view of the car that, it's always changing color. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds in a way. So that's really striking. We're actually servicing an Enzo right now, which is never boring to have either.
Is it red, black, or yellow?
It is red. It is red. Yes,
I knew it was one of those three.
Yep, exactly. I've seen a silver one before. I'd love to see the white one. I think there's only one in existence in Japan from what I believe here. It's you never know what comes through the door. Sometimes it's people that just moved to the area. Sometimes it's people passing through. There's even a couple older Lamborghinis and stuff that came in that you just don't get to see that often.
Yeah, let's say I'm a first-time Ferrari buyer, which I one day hope to say those words out loud and mean them.
Me as well.
I would come to you first. There's no doubt. I walk into your showroom floor. How do you approach that conversation with a first-time buyer? Like, how do you feel them out? You're talking, you don't know his budget, you don't know his taste. Like, kind of walk me through that process of how you land that sale with that first customer that's never bought a Ferrari before.
Sure. Well, I mean, it depends. I think sometimes you have people get a little overwhelmed that, like, now I have to pretend to be somebody so someone will talk to me. And being a little bit polished and experienced in the business, you kind of start to pick up on certain signs. Whatever industry you're in, you have certain telltale signs, but you just want to talk to the person, get to know them a little bit, what interests will bring them in, and eventually, what do you love about cars? What do you hate about cars? What do you have now? Just, a couple questions just to get to know them, to see, like, where they're envisioning something, and regardless of the price point, I don't want to overwhelm them by showing them 20 cars right out of the gate, but it's good to kind of direct them a little bit to what they may be looking for. But, I mean, sometimes you can tell by the taste of the watch they're wearing or specific things that I've had some clients get really impressed that I know what they have from across the room, because they'll say, they're kind of presenting themselves to be a little bit puffed up chest and kind of to be in control a little bit, and we'll say that, well, this car just isn't practical. And respectfully, I kind of will practical, but you're wearing like a Langa split time tourbillon on your wrist. There's only 5 of those in North America. Where was practical when you were buying that watch?
Right.
And it's all of a sudden this look comes over their face like, what? How do you know what that is? And then it's kind of like, you want to refer back to Scarface. Should we start over? You want to come back in? We'll reintroduce ourselves. And, but then you strike a good conversation, and you strike, a relationship up that way that, like, listen, we can be real with each other. We don't have to pretend to be something. And I think that kind of makes people a little bit more relaxed, per se. So, I mean, you start off on having things in common a little bit. And I think that is a good way to, where would you like to be? What do you want now? Even if that doesn't exist. There's a lot of innocent ignorance when it comes to my brand sometimes, of people thinking that it's still $25,000 to service the car like it was a Testarossa with the engine out. So you have to kind of re-educate people. I think that a lot of people, other dealerships or in other places of luxury, kind of sell out of fear instead of selling with confidence. I think that some brands, well, you don't want a Ferrari. I heard they break down a lot. Why don't you just buy another one of these? And I think that people want to play, and, sometimes they're hesitant to jump off. But, I kind of try and tell people, like, listen, this is a fun experience. This isn't something, if you have to beat yourself up to like it, this probably isn't the right one,
Right.
But I jump off the cliff with you. It's an experience we both take together, and, it's going to be fun. And that's when we're going to sell you another 3 or 4 or 5 cars that you don't have to worry, did I get taken advantage of? Was this the right move? Some people need to be pushed a little bit. Respectfully, of course, not pushy as far as, when are you going to do this, hurry up now. But, you get to know them. Everybody has their own approach, and who are you talking to psychologically as well? Where are they in their life, in their mind that day?
Right, absolutely.
It's being able to tell a lot of those things that I think help you to put something together for people.
Yeah, and like you said, it's all about building relationships. And speaking of which, what's the best way for our listeners who do want to buy a Ferrari and are ready to pull the trigger, what's the best way they can reach you?
Well, hell, even if they're not, it's good if you need a little bit of advice. So which way to go? I mean, a little bit of bad advice can send you down the wrong path, but, so it's good to get good advice from people, and genuine advice that, that fits. Hopefully it's great, but you can always reach me on my email if you have any questions for Ferrari, or if you're looking for something or need help ridding yourself of something beautiful, exclusive. It's AGJ, like Adam George John 360 at gmail.com.
Well, can you talk to the Ferrari marketplace a little bit as a whole as it relates to the collector car market?
It's been a wild ride. There's always people that want to bring it down. There's people that want to bring it up, but I kind of work with what you have. I started in 2008 right as everything kind of collapsed, so I can only hear of the good old days versus never living through it or been around it. But I think it's been a strong, good market. I think you have to make your own market sometimes. To worry about, I mean, yes, if we're talking about something that exceeds, $6-8 million sometimes, or even less, that those markets are come up. If you're going for the long term, I mean, get the one you want. I mean, because as soon as you feel like you're settling, that's not the best way. Whether it's $10 million or $30,000, it's not a fun ride at that point, because now you're just bought something to get rid of it. Buying something for the long run is usually the best way. I think that 12 cylinders, as they start to disappear in the brand, are going to probably start to go up in 3 to 5 years, maybe a little longer once they completely get phased out, or hybrid technology and turbos kind of eat up the car industry a little bit more, almost as how you see a 6-speed manual today in a lot of brands, even specifically in Ferraris. You look at the 550 Maranello, or even a 575, or even a 430 stick is still prominently climbing or steadying, holding well. Like, again, everyone tends to try it depending on what side of the country you live on. Some markets are in their winters. Some of them are coming out of it. I think you have to make your market a little bit and buy with confidence as well as sell with confidence. All cars are not investments right out of the gate, but it's your passion for the car that's the enjoyment of obtaining something like that. And it is great that it happens to be appreciating while you happen to own it, but it's, it's better to buy out of passion, and that's exactly the one you want, instead of settling and missing out on the one you really wanted, even though it was a lot more money. Obviously, if it's extremely a lot more money, it's maybe the better choice to hold off and wait to see what happens. The market will probably come with a correction. I don't see a crash happening, but, I guess if I had that algorithm, I'd probably own 200,000 cars by now too. But, so it's, I think we're good. I mean, a lot of new goals have been made with the auctions and things like that. It depends on the crowd, the marketing of that car, what makes that car unique. I happen to be working with a lot of people to figure that out, and have some really good connections with people that are that work with principals only and helping sell or acquire some of their really collectible cars. I think, keeping it off of mainstream for the first little while is sometimes better versus a car that's over-advertised.
All right, let's say I give you $500,000. I'm taking out the Halo cars. No 288s, no F40 Enzos.
Sure.
Taking out the Halo cars.
All
what
right.
would you buy with your $500,000?
With my $500,000?
Yeah, what would you buy?
That's a good question. Well, I think I would probably aim for something in a 12-cylinder, because I go back to my statement. I think that those are going to be a little bit more, not the selection of them. Well, it will be the selection of them more than the quality of them. Selection over price is, I think, what happens with a lot of cars in any category. I think I'd like a 550 Maranello, but I'd also would buy a 430 Scuderia. I think that's the F40 of today. Analog, raw, loud. It doesn't make that sound. The cars of today don't make the sounds like they used to, like it did in the F430.
Right.
Maybe to explore as a 16M Scuderia Spider, if you really want to buy something that will probably start appreciating over time. I think that's one of those cars.
You know the car I would buy, right?
I do. The Super America actually is a really good example. That car about almost 2 years ago, went up to, hitting in the high fours, maybe up to 500. Obviously, if it's a 6-speed manual, that car is still at least 525,000 today, depending on miles and equipment and things like that. But it's that car has come up and then now started to decline. A lot of these cars started to go up, and what was then attainable is now unattainable. So then the next car gets chosen. I even probably have to correct myself. You know exactly what I would buy? I would buy a 599, maybe the GTO, if it falls under 500,000. It's not currently unless there's miles. I would do an F430 Scuderia and a 599 GTB or GTO if I could afford it.
There we go.
That's exactly what I would grab. I think the 599 is one of the most beautiful cars.
All right, so this is my favorite part of the conversation. It's called Keep, Cash, or Crush. So I give you 3 cars, and you have to tell me which one you want to keep, which one you want to cash in, and which one you're okay crushing. So are you ready for this?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right, the first car is a Mint 360 with 10,000 miles. The second one is a 430 Scuderia with 30,000 miles and no service records.
30,000 miles and no service records?
Correct. And the third one is an F50 with a salvage title.
Oh, man.
Oh, good. If I made it harder on you, that means I'm doing my job.
Yeah, that's a good one. So real quick, so an F430 with 30,000, or Scuderia with 30,000 miles, no service history.
Yep.
A Mint 360 with 10,000 miles.
Let's make it harder. Let's make it 5,000 miles.
5,000 miles. Okay. And the other one's a F50 with a salvage title.
Yes. Which one will you keep? Which one will you cash? And which one will you crush?
I think I'd still keep the F50 all day long.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'll take the salvage title. Sure. As far as cash in, obviously I think is the 360 a 6-speed manual?
Let's say no.
No. Okay.
Great question, though.
Yes, well, that makes a difference, because I would probably cash that one in. That's tough because I think, like I said previously, the Scuderia is kind of the F40 of today.
Yep.
I don't care really about the service history or lack thereof. That is a tough one, but F50 you keep. That's the rarest of them all. I think you. Wow.
Which one do you crush?
That's the thing is you can the 30,000 miles, obviously, from a salesperson's point of view. Now, by crushing, does that mean you can crash it, race it until you crash it, or actually in the crusher? Throw it in the crusher.
In the crusher.
Wow. If you could just throw a Porsche in there, then it'd be easy. But okay. Then I would already had it. I would say, I guess, the 360 isn't as rare at that point. It's not a manual. Let's crush that one.
All right.
Let's cash in on the Scuderia.
All right. I love it. That's a great way to look at it, and I'm so happy you struggled so hard with that. That means I did my job.
I did struggle. I did struggle with it. But I was just kidding more about the Porsche, but it would have been easy at that point.
That's right. It would have been easy at that point. To make a Ferrari Brand Ambassador squirm makes my day. So thank you so much, Adam.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Collector Car Podcast. Don't forget to give us a nice rating on iTunes and be sure to follow us on Instagram and everywhere else at the Collector Car Podcast.